Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to continue on in our conversation that we've been having over the past couple of videos on this idea of urban systems, or maybe if you want to talk about it as urban networks. So anyway, in our last video we were looking at the central place theory, and so one of the important things about the central place theory is it causes us to understand cities in this relationship. Now we've been talking about systems, and you can look at systems in a variety of different ways. But basically, the central place theory puts settlements into what we can call an urban hierarchy. So basically, we're looking at cities that we're looking at them and comparing them in their level of importance. And in the case of central place theory, we're looking at cities in their place of importance as a result of their economic functions. Because remember, if you look at the central place, it has economic functions that are high threshold and high range. And so the greater the population, the greater the activities with higher thresholds and higher ranges, the higher up on the urban hierarchy that particular city is going to be. And so you get this network of cities that relate to each other and that interact with each other based upon its position in the urban hierarchy. And so I found this particular illustration. I thought it was pretty good to look at because it relates to us in this idea of core, semi-periphery, and periphery type situation where you have these black circles which indicate this idea of the core city. So these would be our highest level on the urban hierarchy, and then you kind of work your way down to cities that are less important. And if you look at the cities, cities like Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, London, Paris. Of course, these are some of our more prominent cities in the world. Their populations are larger, they have higher level economic activities, and so certainly they're going to be higher on this urban hierarchy, even though some might argue that maybe Los Angeles and Chicago shouldn't be at the highest levels. And of course, this is a little bit older of an illustration because we see the Soviet Union over here. But then you see this network of relationships that exist between these larger cities, these more important cities, and these less important cities, whether we're talking about regionally or we're talking about between regions, between North America, South America, or if we're talking about internationally, between maybe Singapore, Los Angeles. And again, we're looking at these on this urban hierarchy based upon their economic functions. And so the idea would be that the cities that have economic activities with higher ranges and higher thresholds are going to be higher on the urban hierarchy and therefore more important. And when we look at the central place theory and this idea of perfect and even distribution of populations based upon the position on the urban hierarchy and types of economic activity, basically what you get is you get this concept of what's called the rank size rule. Now, people like to look at the rank size rule and think that if countries follow the rank size rule, this is pretty good, because what we have is we have a fairly even distribution of population across the landscape. You also have a fairly even distribution of development, and we talked about this in our political unit. In those places in the world we have high concentrations of economic, political, and cultural power in one place, it makes it difficult for the other regions in the country to obtain certain elements of development. And so what we're saying here is, and this is kind of what the central place theory illustrates, is that there's a direct correlation between population size and rank on the hierarchy. Same thing, there's a direct correlation between population size and the types of economic activities that are taking place. So all those things are related: population size, economic activities, and rank on the urban hierarchy. So basically, if you have this perfect distribution that Christaller is talking about, and a country follows the rank size rule, we should be able to guess or determine what kind of the approximate population of a city should be, because the population of that city should be 1 over the rank of that city based upon the population of the largest city. And I guess I should have made this a little bit more clear. Not rank of the largest city, but 1 over the rank of the 1 over the rank of that city based upon its relationship to the largest city. So what I mean by that is, if we have a city, I'm going to go writing again so I know this isn't going to be good. Let's say that we have a country that has the city's largest population is 10 million. And I'm not going to write that out because that'll be too hard. So this 10 million is the largest population of a city in a country. If a country follows the rank size rule, basically the idea is the number 2 city in the country should be 1/2, the population size should be 1/2 of the population of that largest city. Okay, so if that's the case, the city that has the second highest population should have a population of about 5 million. Okay, and you guys can do the math. We'll do one more, but you can do the math and figure this out. The number 3 city should have a population that's about 1/3 of the population of the largest city. Okay, so that would mean that you have a population that's roughly 1/3 of 10 million, 3.333333333, repeating for you math majors out there, million people in that particular city. Now, we typically one of the places that we're most likely to find this is in the United States, mainly because the United States, in terms of its city development, was newer, and we had much more even distribution of population, mainly because of you have the climate of the United States. Most parts of the country are relatively hospitable and can be inhabited very easily. You tend not to find this rank size rule in older countries that have more well-established cities, much higher concentrations of power and prominence in some of their older cities, and even when I say older countries, even in the New World, in the Old World, so even in countries in South America, because a lot of those cities were established by the European countries, did not achieve independence until later. A lot of them still have primate cities. And remember, we talked about primate cities in our political unit. Primate cities are those cities that have high concentrations of political, economic, and cultural influence. And the way that we tell primate cities is that if they do not follow the rank size rule, basically the idea here is that there's one city that is significantly larger in terms of population than all the other cities in the country. So instead of being 1/2, the second city might be 1/3, 1/4, 1/5 of the size of the largest city. So we can look at that illustrated here. I'll go ahead and discard my ink annotations. We can go ahead and see that illustrated here, and I'm sure these websites are highly reputable. But anyway, so if you look at this, and I believe that this is showing kind of the city in the metropolitan area, not necessarily just the city limits itself. But if you look at this, New York's population based on this is 8.2 million people. Okay, Los Angeles, number 2, should be roughly half of that, and it's pretty close. Not exact, but pretty close, because we'd be looking for a population of about 4 million. Okay, Chicago, Illinois, should be roughly 1/3. Again, not terribly far off. And so you see how this roughly follows this idea of rank size rule. It's not perfect, it's not exact, and it's hard to find exact in any time in the world. But so this fairly closely follows the rank size rule, shows fairly good even distribution of populations throughout the country. From the state of New York to California, Illinois to Texas to Pennsylvania. You notice that several states are included here in kind of this top 10 situation. Then if we go over to the country of France, and again, I'm sure this is a highly reputable site, you look at this and you have several definitions, and I think this is kind of interesting because you look back up here and it tells you various definitions, whether we're talking about the urban area or the urban zone. Okay, so that'd be like the metropolitan area, the population metropolitan area or urban area. So school just got out for us. Sorry about that. Anyway, so you look at Paris, 12 million people in the metropolitan area, the urban and the metropolitan area. Lyon, only about 2 million. So you notice that there's a huge decrease between the main city in France, Paris, and the second largest city, Lyon. Now you notice these other cities are a little bit closer, but again, there's that idea of the primate city. I apologize for all the distractions here today. Now, another way that we can look at this situation of urban systems is by understanding the structure through what are called world cities and global cities. Okay, so when we look at these world cities, basically you have it's a two-tiered structure in this situation. We have the world cities, and these are considered cities that have worldwide economic, political, and cultural influence and power. And one of the things we note of this is that these cities have changed throughout time, and so obviously there's no one city that's going to remain consistent and constant in terms of its influence. As power shifts, as whether it's political power, economic power, cultural power shifts, then so is the significance of that particular city. Now, just like we were talking about in our earlier conversation, typically these are also going to be cities of very high population. Just like you look at that idea of the gravity model, right? The higher the population, the more likely it is that people are to go there. So all these things kind of have a culminating effect, making these cities even more powerful and more popular. So one of the other indicators is that these cities have what's called para-regional influence. Mainly, basically, what we're referring to is they just have influence that reaches across various regions. And I think this is an interesting chart to look at, because basically what they did here, this particular International Congress Convention Association, they looked at the different areas and that you can consider that are important for cities: business activity, human capital, information exchange, cultural experience, and political engagement, and just gave the most the most prominent cities, and then also linked or listed some other cities that are significant in those categories. So that also gives you kind of a good idea of what might be considered some world cities in some various categories here. And so you have the world cities or the global cities, and then underneath the world cities or global cities, you have what are called megacities. Megacities, in terms of importance, are a step down from the world cities or the global cities. Okay? And their significance is not necessarily on a global scale, but it's a local scale. Think of it as, again, on this idea of a network, or it's a network or the system that we've been referring to. Now, apparently one of the qualifications is that the city has a population of 10 million plus. So still large cities, but mainly because of their position in less developed countries or developing countries, they have not received the influence that the other important cities have. Mainly they serve as a connector. They serve as a connector between the larger, more important cities on a global scale and their local country. And I thought this particular illustration illustrates this point very well. And of course, this isn't talking about the megacities, but it's still this idea that if we look at the city of London and we think about it as connections, you have the most important connections to the city of London, the next most important, and then these world cities would probably exist kind of on this level here as a medium link, or maybe an important link here, but certainly not in the major link to the city of London. So I thought this illustration of kind of a connector was rather interesting, and kind of helped illustrate this point of systems, this urban system. Well, that's all we have time for today, except for I think we have time for a quiz ferret. Quiz ferret, our furry little friend, has popped his head out of the ground. He has a question for us. So the question from the quiz ferret today is: according to Crystaller, what is it that connects the central place to the settlements surrounding it, or the hinterland? So pause the video, write down your answer, see what you get, and the answer is economic activities. Remember, Crystaller believes that the city is a central place are a product of their economic function. So, hope you found all that to be helpful. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comment box below, and I hope to see you next time.